informative and contains my opinion and understanding of the subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live. So, hopefully everything is fixed. I was lagging before, like I was on Daniel's show, but I am going. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right, perfect. Oh my God. Sorry, I did that by accident. I accidentally just hit the wrong button and almost stopped the live by accident. Oh my goodness. All right, so if you joined us before, not us, but if you joined me last week, I put together a couple, bless you, I put together a couple tables, and they were like not all over the place, but they weren't all together and they needed work still. So it was kind of like my beginning. So I since then went back and I fixed everything, and now I have everything, and I want to show Dr. Schultz to see what she thinks of it. So just in case you're joining for the first time, I'm Dr. Jaime Vona, and this is Dr. Anya Schultz, and we are very happy to be with you today. We're going to be talking about things like personality psychology and all those good things, but we're going to use Idaho 4 as a way to do that. So as people come in, hello, everyone. Welcome. All right, I have my comments up. We're good to go. All right, now I think I'm just going to pull it up on here so that people could view it too, because I did take so much time to do this. So I'm just pulling it up real quick, and then I'm going to connect it to the stream, and then that way it gives people a minute to get in anyway. People are still coming in. So, but in the meantime, I will still put this up. Wait, hold on. Here we go. Let me just X out of my YouTube so that it doesn't echo. All right, here we go. Share screen. All right, now I have to see how big I can make this. Hi, Ann. Hi, Teresa. I'm glad you're here to see our live. Thank you for being here. Let me see if I can make that any bigger. Hold on. Should I just do like the old plus?
Probably.
I know. What am I doing? I was going to say, what am I doing that it's not getting bigger? I'm afraid to do too much and it mess up. So I might just leave it. Can you guys see it on the other side? Are you able to view it? Because if you're able to see it, then I'm just going to leave it the way that it is. If not, I guess I could do view. It's at 100%. So if I hit this, I should be able to do 150%.
Yep.
Page width. Oh, there we go. I made it bigger. Perfect. Hi, Truth. Good to see you. I miss everybody when I don't see them. I'm sorry I had to cancel last week. I had a little bit of an emergency. Let's just keep it at that. But anyway, so if you joined me last time, again, we compared or started to compare Ted Bundy, Patrick Bateman, and Bryan Kohberger. So I'm going to say at first that I never thought to add American Psycho into the mix, but Daniel from Drunk Turkey Show, when I was on his channel, he brought it up, and I hadn't seen American Psycho in a long time, so I watched it, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's some comparisons. There's some things that aren't alike, but there's a lot of things that definitely are alike. So what I did was I put together, and it looks really cool. I think I did a good job. I'm going to pat myself on the back for this one. So I put together a little true crime profile comparison. And look, a squirrel. And one of the things that we're going to look at that I put together that we did not have last time, there's actually a couple things. I did like stages of childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, stuff like that, so that you guys can see the progression. Like, you don't just turn into a psychopath, right? So there's things that happen throughout our childhood. There's also genetics that takes account, right? So, oh, you're not late. You're all good. But yeah, so let's start. So let's go through this first part. So this first one, just to introduce everybody to this, and just in case you're, new to this, I'm comparing again. So Ted Bundy is convicted. Bryan Kohberger is alleged. And then Patrick Bateman is fictional. So I think it's cool to have three separate examples of even something like a personality disorder in general, because you could see that they're similar, all three of them, in certain ways, and then there's differences. And you'll see as we go through it. So first, let me just introduce Ted Bundy. So we know that he was a psychopath and that he was narcissistic. He was stop, Truth just got me sidetracked. That was her fault. Okay, so with Ted Bundy, he is a psychopath and narcissistic. So he's confirmed serial killer targeting young college women. He was charismatic, which is a big part, right? Manipulative and calculating. He studied psychology, worked at a suicide hotline center. He had no remorse for his victims. He often returned to the crime scene, represented himself in court, and he craved control and attention. So likely traits: antisocial personality or sociopath, psychopathy, and I believe this was like the dark triad, and then narcissistic personality. And then do you want to add anything to that for him, just to give like a background?
No. I mean, he was
Yeah,
very charismatic. He got his victims very easily. He was seen as good looking, why he was probably able to kill over 30 women at least, that he has admitted to. And even after he got arrested, I think he still was very much like, look at me type of mentality. So
and
he was
that
very
look at me,
charismatic,
right?
very
Isn't that like
liked.
Kohberger? Yes, he
Yeah.
was very liked, which is very different than Kohberger. So in the same sentence, two of the things that you picked out that we see with psychopathy, one is very much like Kohberger. The other one is like very much not like Kohberger.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to have three different people, or, that we could look at with similar disorders to show how they don't all look the exact same. So like you can't just look for a Ted Bundy or a Kohberger or a Bateman, like that they all could very much be a little bit different depending on other personality traits. So for Patrick Bateman, real quick, you guys, this is the fictional character, right? So Wall Street executive with a double life as a serial killer. Again, this was fictional. He's emotionally detached, manipulative, and narcissistic. Has an obsession with image, status, and control. That's a huge one. And possible hallucinations or delusional thinking. His fictional traits were psychopathy, malignant narcissism, and possible schizotopal and delusional traits, which we'll get to because I did a whole chart on that. So then Bryan Kohberger, real quick. Let me move down to Bryan Kohberger so you guys could see this one. Okay, so over here we have, and again, this one is going to be speculative because it's still in court, right? So, and that's not even in court yet, but it's still being tried or has to be tried. So for Bryan Kohberger, this one is alleged. So speculative psychological profile: accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students. He was a PsyD criminology student, studied criminal psychology. He had Reddit posts asking criminals to describe their emotions pre and post crime, and even during the crime, I think it was. He was socially awkward, which is different than Ted Bundy. He was described as arrogant and cold by some classmates. And he drove 10 miles at night to the alleged crime scene, surveilling the victims beforehand. So, and that isn't based on my opinion. We don't know that to be true yet, but I am 100% believe that he definitely was there before surveying them. Maybe not stalking because it doesn't fit Idaho stalking law, but definitely surveilling them, which is pretty much the same thing. So some speculative traits if proven guilty. So if he is the one that's found guilty of this, I put possible for all of these, but I truly believe that he has a narcissistic personality. even if he didn't do this. He has superiority and academic obsession, possible schizoid traits. I've been saying this from the beginning: detachment, fixation on inner world, and potential antisocial behavior. So planned violence, lack of remorse. And then even potential obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So that's rigid and controlled. So I want to say Kohberger has not been diagnosed with any personality disorder. All psychological references are speculative and based on available reports and public behavior. So boom, just have to make sure I cover my own ass there. So let's look over here. So I just had everything I just said, you guys, because I'm going to upload this to my community tab after I'm done. So I have like my little printouts here, but everything I just said is in a chart here. So if you wanted to look at the person, and then I put antisocial, that's what ASPD means, antisocial personality disorder, also known as psychopathy, narcissism. And then I put schizoid, schizotopal, because I believe that Kohberger has possible schizoid traits, but Patrick Bateman had schizotopal traits. But that was just everything I already said. So let's go through the DSM-5-TR visual guide of personality, neurodevelopmental, and related disorders. I worked so hard on this, you guys. I can't even tell you. All right. So Anya, do you want to talk through this one, narcissistic personality disorder?
Sure. You want me to just read it?
Yeah, or whatever you want to say about it.
All
I
right.
keep like covering it up by accident.
No, you're fine. So the core traits of narcissistic personality disorder are grandiosity, where people have an exaggerated sense of self. That's what we see in Ted Bundy, that big grandiosity type thing where it's all about me. Craves admiration. That was also Bundy. And I think that's also Kohberger as well, to an extent, with his
I do too.
obsession with wanting to be in the perfectionist area. So definitely like that, especially since he did not get a lot of that growing up. Lacks empathy, I would say, is on all three of them. Obviously, when we're looking at serial murders or murder in general, when it's done with a purpose, normally there is a lack of empathy. They do what they need to do in order to get what they need to get. And that's where the exploits others comes in. So I'll jump ahead real quick for that one, because it's all about them and their needs and what it is that they need from other people. So they will manipulate people to the extent of what it is they're looking for.
And not feel bad about it at all.
No. And then believes they're special or unique. I think that definitely happened with Kohberger, because he was very, even as just the TA in the classroom, that seemed like he liked that position, being in a position of power, being seen as someone who is special and unique, and then very arrogant as well, which is all three of those characters. So,
I totally
very
agree
much
with that.
your face type of people.
So Anne wants to know, are people born with these disorders? That's like
yeah. So I think it is it's that big old debate, nature versus nurture. And a lot of the times we find that it is a compatibility between the two ideas. So there are definitely things that we are looking at nowadays where the brain looks different. The amount of neurotransmitters and different hormones that we have in our brain look differently in some of these individuals, but we cannot just say that that is what caused this. That is a predisposition to certain disorders. And this predisposition, when combined with all of the environmental influences of, not having structure in their life or abuse or whatever it is, would then basically turn that on, the predisposition, into the on button. And then we start to see the development of full-fledged narcissistic personality disorder, or any disorder, technically.
That was so well said. You said that so well. So I would just back that up by saying, yes, we do believe that there is some biological component, but it's really the environment that winds up, not always, but most of the time, that will shape this. One of the things I could say is think of Jeffrey Dahmer, although I think he's a very different serial killer than the rest, just because his mom took so many medicines when she was pregnant. There's many reasons, but him and his dad, if you guys watch that series, his dad at the end talks about how he had similar like similar thoughts as him, but that he just never followed through with them. So that's like an example. And I don't know if you guys remember that story, but he was left alone with his grandmom a lot. So the dad winds up like finding another woman. And so he's not around a lot. So that gives Jeffrey Dahmer all that extra time to like explore. And then him and his dad, like they bonded over roadkill, like cutting up roadkill. But again, so his dad wound up stopping at roadkill and he didn't. Do you know what I mean? So you're right. The environment does play a huge role, because you could say that he passed down the gene, but it was that lack of structure and everything that you just said before. That's what I was thinking of when you were saying it. I'm like, this fits for that totally. Hi, Lucy. All right. So for the clue, you guys will see I put clue, and it's another word, like it was just another word for example. So it's all about me, needs consistent praise and then dismisses others' needs. And that's that, disregard for others. The next one real quick that I'd go over is antisocial. Some of the core traits here, or is it ignores others' rights. So they're not really worried about what's going to happen to you. Lies, manipulates, and breaks rules and laws. They're impulsive. They're aggressive. No remorse or guilt. Must show signs before the age of 15 of conduct disorder. So this is the deal. A lot of people ask me, well, what if you don't get diagnosed with conduct disorder? Can you not get diagnosed at 18 with antisocial? No, absolutely not. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that there has to be signs of, show signs of conduct disorder. So maybe they didn't get a full-blown diagnosis, but if you don't take somebody to the doctor and they can't get a diagnosis, are you just going to say we're not going to, put two and two together and say that there's a personality disorder? No. But one of the things that we see most often is when somebody has conduct disorder, especially oppositional defiant disorder before the age of 15, and then do things like cruelty to animals and start fires, they're two big red flags for later on for psychopathy or antisocial personality. And then the clue here is repeated violation of the rules and people's rights with no remorse. So again, this person's thinking about how they can advance themselves before, or their own needs before your needs. And if that means that they have to step on your needs, then that's okay, because that's something they're willing to do. All right, the next one I have real quick is schizoid. So do you want to do schizoid?
Sure.
And then I'll read the last one, and then we have a table for it.
Yep. So core traits, they're emotionally detached, meaning they don't really form really great relationships. They have no emotions towards things or people. So they kind of distance themselves a little bit in that fashion. They prefer to be alone. They are, independent loners because they can't form the emotional attachment, which means they don't have relationships, and they really don't care that they don't have relationships. They don't want them. They don't need them. They really just want to be left alone type of people. If they have any type of emotional expression, it's pretty far and few between, and it's probably used just to socialize, to get by within the society itself. But they're really pretty indifferent to many different things like praise or criticism. They really are the people that are pretty aloof and just do not care about anything. So
that was good. Good job. So loner by choice, not distressed, just uninterested. So think of like Kohberger, right? He did have friends at certain times, but a lot of those friends, like he had friends when he was using drugs. So that was more of like a drug culture, right? You wind up hanging around others that are like you. And then growing up, the friends that he did have, it seemed more like a loyalty thing on their part. And like he kept violating their space and stuff like that. And it seemed like they just kept giving him more chances because they were good people, not because he would, that he changed or anything. And the one girl even said later that she found out that she wound up taking him to go buy drugs and didn't know it. He said he had to go pick up needles for his grandmom or something. And she found out later that it was for him. So, and again, think about it, right? So that's a great example of violating someone else's rights. If she would have gotten pulled over, and that was her whole thing. Like if I got pulled over and got caught with heroin in my car, I would have gotten in so much trouble. But like he didn't care about that. He just needed a ride to go pick it up.
Yeah. It also reminded me of some of his Reddit entries where he talked about the detachment from like, I don't even really like my family. I know I should want to hug them and see them and enjoy them. I just really don't. So that kind of fits in with that.
And you're right about Stefan Stern's mom. She definitely says that they talk about how he's in isolation. And she's like, but you're good at that because you never really needed friends. Like you'd like to have friends, but you're good without them. And he's like, yeah, Mom, I've lasted 30 days or 3 months already. Oh, I have to do those. You guys will die with that one. Stop. Okay, so obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So some of the core traits here, and again, I think this one we see a lot in Kohberger too. And I think this is the one that people are confusing, in my opinion, with obsessive compulsive disorder. So the core traits for obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is different, and I'll tell you how in a minute. You have perfectionism that interferes with tasks, preoccupied with the rules, order, and control. Think about Kohberger when you think of that. So he was preoccupied with order and control, inflexible with morals and ethics. I think of his aunt saying that she had to go buy new pots and pans to cook from because he refused to eat on the ones that might have had contamination from animals. In my head, like that was his position. And even if the aunt said, like, I've never cooked anything on this, it was almost like, you have to go get new pots and pans. The mom even said it to her, like, you have to go get new pots and pans or he won't eat it. I would have been like, go get takeout. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have if it was my niece or nephew. Only. So rigid and stubborn, reluctant to delegate. So think of somebody who just does it themselves, because by me, like, for example, I often will do everything in my house and then bitch that I'm the one that does everything, but I'm bad at delegating. So like if I don't ask for help, then get mad at people for not helping me, it doesn't make sense to them because they're like, why didn't you just ask for help? And I'm like, I don't know. Why do I have to ask for help? You guys should just know. But I think of that type of stuff. So, but this person is different in that they're reluctant to delegate because they could do it better than you. So it's a difference. So that's why I wanted to make sure I said that, because you could be reluctant to delegate or not delegate good like me, or you could be reluctant to do it, which is different. That just means I'm not giving you any power or control of this situation because I don't trust that you're, as smart as I am to do it. If I just micromanage myself, not me personally, I'm saying if I was this person, if I just micromanage everything and do it myself, then it'll be done right. But I can't trust in other people. Even if they had a higher degree than me or specialized in something, I still would think probably that I could do it better if I had this disorder. So they're rigid and perfectionistic, but no true obsessions and compulsions. So let me just explain that real quick. So with obsessive compulsive disorder, that's ruled by anxiety. So the person has anxiety about whatever they're obsessing over. So let's say they're in bed and they're comfy. I think I gave this example the other night, and they think that, they left the oven on. Even if they don't think they left the oven on, once it becomes an obsession, it doesn't matter how comfortable they are. They can't fall asleep because all they can think about is shutting the oven off. So you have to get up and go downstairs. But again, the reason you actually get out of bed and disturb that is because of anxiety. Your anxiety is so bad that you can't get yourself to fall asleep or stop thinking about it till you do whatever the behavior is. That's a lot different than obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which I see a lot of in Bryan, even with like the perfectionism and eating disorders and stuff. What do you want to say anything about like this in Bryan or anything? Because I feel like I see
it's more this than OCD. Even though I know that they've talked about an OCD diagnosis and things of that nature, but I think as soon as the fact that he's constantly showing perfectionism, that completely disregards OCD and becomes this.
Yes.
So
yes,
it's the biggest difference between the two.
Yes, I love that. And again, that big thing is the anxiety, right? So this next part real quick, I added, you guys, autism, and I added the ones that the defense thinks that he is just because. And then later, wait, let me see. Do I have this one? I do. So I have this one here. So instead of going through autism and the developmental disorder and what I'll go through it this way so that way we don't, because I have so many pages here, you guys. I like nerded out on this. You have no idea. But I want to make sure that I get to the tables because that's where I really put a lot of hard work into. So again, I'm going to put this up on my community tab if I could figure out how to do it. But it's a quick comparison table. So what I did was I put the disorder on the left-hand side. Then I gave you social skills, emotions, behavioral patterns, and when does it start? So this one was a big one for me. So the first one, NPD, is narcissistic personality disorder. So wants, praise, lacks empathy, all the things we already said. So one of the big emotions that you'll see is arrogance. They're often self-centered. They feel entitled. Even if you think of Bateman, which we're going to get to in a minute, that played a big role in his life. And this, it says, I should have wrote one as a diagnosed. So with a personality disorder, it starts earlier than this, right? But you can't diagnose it until early adulthood, so till 18 or older. So maybe I should switch that before I post it to when does it get diagnosed. So then the next one is the antisocial, which we already went over, so I won't bore people with that. But all of the things that I said before here, so I could post these tables. And then I did the same with schizoid and obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So that's what that stands for. But one of the things I want you guys to see is that these are all early adulthood. So we don't diagnose any of the personality disorders until you're at least 18 years old. But let's say for some reason, I was like positive that this 17 or 16-year-old, like in my own head, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm definitely saying blah, 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 blah. I might write on the file like narcissistic personality traits. So I wouldn't diagnose a disorder, but I might put it on there just to remind, not that you would forget somebody that's narcissistic as a client, but yeah, like you're not going to forget that. But you might put that in the chart. But then the other ones that the defense got him diagnosed with, which I think is bullshit, are all things that you get diagnosed with in early childhood. And he's not diagnosed with any of these things. And then OCD is the only one that's different. You can get diagnosed with that at any age, but you often get diagnosed with this in your teens. So that's one of my problems. He just got diagnosed at 30, not at like when he was younger. And then also the OCD, I don't see the anxious part, right? And I don't see him avoiding feared situations. If anything, think about how fearful it must be to get sober or to lose 100 and whatever pounds. Like that, like just thinking about that is anxiety provoking. So I would say that he doesn't fit this. I don't understand how people, to me, it's more obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Then I put developmental coordination disorder, if you guys remember that. So this, you may struggle socially in groups. Frustration is common. Clumsy, motor delays. Again, you guys, we talked about how he did kickboxing and stuff. How do you do all those things and have this disorder? I don't know. But you usually get this in early childhood and it's usually gone by your teens. So I don't even know where the defense is going with this. I was kind of confused with that. Do you want to say anything about that before I switch to the next one?
No, I completely agree. He isn't showing any of those things. And I feel like when you have a disorder of any kind, they would be present within the courtroom as well. And I see someone who's very stoic, who's very much just sits there and listens and doesn't really have any emotions towards anything that they're saying. And I feel like you would start to see the frustration or the anxiety or some sort of behavior. You know, it's very hard to, especially for someone who I don't think has gotten any kind of counseling, he wouldn't be able to control it as well as he is.
No, and I think not for nothing, but why would the defense feel the need to put it out there? Like they put a whole motion that they want the public to like know that these disorders cause you to not have, to have a flat affect and stuff like that.
Well, so I think they realize that they're gonna lose without sympathy from the jury.
I agree.
And that's their attempt at it.
And then they also are trying to get it to where they're not allowed to say psychopath and stuff like that or antisocial personality. That's ridiculous. I hope the judge, I don't know. I haven't looked. I don't know if anybody knows if they put it in the comments, but I do have to look. I just got home from work right before we came on. So I do still have to look today and see if there's any updates, but I hope the judge definitely puts that, like says no to that, because my thing is, why are you worried? If you weren't afraid that he was antisocial or a psychopath, why would you have to make a motion to say that we're not allowed to say those words in court?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't they say that we're not allowed to say eating disorder? Do you know what I mean? Like they picked out psychopath. So it's like, I almost feel like you see the traits and that's why you're putting it out there. I don't know. For this next part, you guys, what I did was I got the different disorders and then I really did go all out on this. And then I put the core traits. So for antisocial, I put disregard for others, deceit, impulsivity, lack of remorse. And then I gave you the person. So Kohberger, Bundy, and Bateman. Remember, one is alleged, one is convicted, and one is fictitious, which I think is good because it shows you like a broad spectrum of these personality disorders. So for evidence and traits, so this whole slide right here, if you will, or chart rather, is just for antisocial personality disorders or sociopath. That's what a lot of people know it as. For Kohberger, the evidence or the traits I saw, and if Dr. Schultz has anything to add, please do so. But the ones that I see here for myself especially is allegedly surveilled as victims. I wrote stalked, but surveilled, whatever you want to call it. Murdered without clear remorse and highly premeditated. If you guys just look at his thumbs up picture, he was like so happy at 10:30 that morning. So if we find out that he was the one to do this, imagine being home by 10:30 in the morning, showered, you know what I mean? And with a happy face and a thumbs up. And somebody sent me a picture of Ted Bundy doing the exact same thing. And his fist is like out the way Kohberger's is, where it doesn't look like a fist. It's weird. But I put, does this match with antisocial personality disorder? So then I put likely traits of this disorder if proven guilty, but more controlled than impulsive. That's my opinion. Do you agree with that? Disagree?
I
Add,
agree.
not add?
I definitely agree.
You
I
agree with
think
this?
like when we were talking about some of the core traits, and impulsivity is always on there. However, I find that when we're talking about serial murders or certain things like that, that goes out the window a lot of the times because they tend to be highly organized. And with him being what we believe is OCPD, he wouldn't have the impulsivity. He would have the perfectionism. Like, I'm going to get this right. I'm going to plan for this.
I agree.
So this is why serial killers get away with things for so long. It's not because they're impulsive. When they start to lose their cool about certain things, or they feel offended on some level, that's when we start to see the impulsivity take over in those
That's
individuals. But
right. And that fits Kohberger totally. If you think about his circumstances right before it, right? So then for Bundy, I have repeated deception, manipulation, violent murders, charming yet remorseless. And again, you're going to see that there's some, because all of this is fitting under this disorder. That's the, the end result here. But I put classic antisocial personality disorder, but he also meets the serial killer profile, which is that dark triad that people always ask me about. So I put that he also fits that, but just know that the dark triad is not really part of the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. However, we are starting to talk about traits and stuff. So, I mean, it is in there, but it's not in there as like a antisocial personality disorder is. So it might be mentioned, but it's not. Yes, true. Superficial charm. That's a huge one. I'm glad you said that. So it's not exactly charm. It's superficial charm. So it's I'm acting this out pretty much because I know that I'm being charming and I know that I'm getting over on you. So I'm going to do more of that with other people. So it's like they try out different things with people. And one of the big things that somebody with this disorder does is mirrors you. So that's a huge one. So if you see somebody like a Bundy in different situations or with different interviewees, let's say, it wouldn't be odd for him to appear different because he's changing his mannerisms and stuff to fit the person that he's talking to at the time, because that would then make them feel comfortable. Does that make sense? I mean, I know that makes sense to you.
well, yeah, that's the manipulation part right there.
Yes.
Bundy, I don't think did too much of that because he, even like when he got arrested, he seemed charming still. So, but a lot
He
of
tried
them
to defend
really
himself.
I mean, obviously we know what's his face did that all the time. Who did we just talk about? Why am I having a blank?
Oh, Bateman?
No.
Oh no. Oh
Yeah.
my God. The one that ingested people.
Yes. Dahmer.
Oh my God.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes,
I like
Jeffrey Dahmer.
completely
Why
was
did
having a
we
blank.
we both
So
just had an old moment.
He did the fake charm because every time he met someone, he learned what they liked, what they did in order to be able to approach him and get him to trust them and then bring them back with them to his apartment and stuff. So
And again, you guys, that's the thing. So for the reason Kohberger and Bundy are very different is because one has that superficial charm and the other one, like you said, it's almost like the opposite type thing. So, and that is part of this disorder, right? So you could have somebody that's more calculated and manipulative and somebody else that's more impulsive and stuff like that. But like you said, with serial killers, we often see planning and stuff like that, which shows more control. But I agree with that. But both things could be true. So, and then for Bateman, this is cold, calculated killings, no empathy, a double life. This is fictional, but it was designed, the character was designed as a textbook case of antisocial personality disorder. So if you look at this, so I guess that's another good thing to point out here is that I made the different connection between Bundy and Kohberger, but then showed how they're different. And then Bateman is a great understanding of this disorder because he's a fictional character. So he was created to be what we think a psychopath is, if that makes sense. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Nope.
If not, I'll go to my next slide. All right, let me go to the next slide. So next we have narcissistic personality. We don't have to do all of them because there's one slide that I want to get to towards the end. I want to make sure we get to it. But all right, let's go over this real quick. So with narcissistic, I just got rid of my paper. Okay, so first we have Kohberger. So we have, let me put it like that so you guys could see. All right, so for Kohberger, we have allegedly wanted to feel what it was like to kill. And I put that in quotations because that was part of one of the questions that he had on the Reddit survey. And then he studied criminology, may have seen himself as intellectually superior. I think he did see himself. I had to put may have, but he clearly saw himself as intellectually superior. And then match with narcissistic, I put possible narcissistic traits, especially intellectual grandiosity. Do you want to add anything? I think he's a narcissist. I do. But no, I think that we have to see more.
Yeah, I think we need to see more. You know how I felt, like I'm on board with the narcissistic tendency, but I do want more. But I think this chart really shows people the differences in narcissistic personality because even though it has just one site, like when we diagnose someone with narcissism, no matter what subtype you have, it's just narcissistic personality disorder. But there are many different subtypes, and Kohberger, while he had the intellectual grandiosity, I don't think he had grandiosity in any other way. Where Bundy, I think, was grandiose in every single aspect of his life. Where Kohberger, I think, was actually more of a malignant, but in the places he felt confident, it was more the grandiosity. So he knew he was smart. He knew he always did well in school. So you know what? Let me show you how I shine. However, he doesn't have that when he's meeting people or speaking to people.
It's funny you said that. So the other night when I was on, I think it was True said, because somebody said that they heard. So one of the things I was getting conflicting, and I was asking everybody what they thought is that some people were saying that after the crimes that he was like charming, and then other people were saying that he was like just quiet. So what we figured out is that when he was at school and they were talking about the crime, he was more observational and quiet. But when he went to his doctor's appointment, they were the people that said that he seemed very friendly and charming. And Truth pointed out that it's probably because in the doctor situation, he knows that the doctor supersedes him there. So kind of like you said, it's like in certain situations where he thinks he's the smartest or he thinks he's the most skilled at something, then he exerts it. But when he's not the most skilled, he like can step down. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? So that's pretty much what you just said. Yeah. Okay. All right. So for Bundy, repeated deception. Oh, no. Sorry. I read the wrong one. Craved attention, believed he was too smart to be caught, and loved media attention. That's a big one, you guys, for these guys. They think that they're too smart to be caught. Think about it. Think about some of the serial killers that used to, and again, with social media, it's making it harder and like, stuff with technology. But years ago, the BTK killer and stuff, some of these people were so narcissistic and so confident that they would write to newspapers. They would write the cops. Some of them would send things to the cops themselves, almost like taunting them. Like, I'm a step ahead of you. Like, what are you doing? And like, how narcissistic do you have to be or confident in your crimes that you could do that?
Definitely. I mean, I don't know if anybody is watching the Happy Face series that
No,
is
but I
on
will. What
Hulu
is it?
right now. He is someone who's still alive in jail, and the story is really partially based on his daughter, who's now a grown up. And he was one of these where he signed all of his letters with a happy face. At the crime scenes, there was a happy face because he
Oh.
wanted the police to know. Jesperson, I believe, is his last name. He wanted the people to know that I did this. This is who is responsible for this. So they taunt people all the time.
They do. Wait, I'm giggling over here in my head because when you just said that, I thought of like every mob movie I ever seen, and they're like, "Look at my face. I did this to you. Don't forget my face. I did this to you." That's what that just reminded me of.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, they're
But
also
again, if you think
people.
they're also narcissistic, that's what I was just going to say. If you think about it, they're also narcissistic, right? And a lot of them are in that situation are also antisocial. If you think, you know, so there's like no remorse. So that actually makes sense, you guys. That's actually pretty funny. But I think over here, so we have for narcissistic, strong narcissistic elements, charming, manipulative, grandiose. And then for Bateman, he was obsessed with status. I don't know if you guys remember, but at one part, all the guys pull out their business cards, and the one guy gets like this extra thick card, and they all kind of look at him like he's like the alpha of the group now. And then somebody else like puts theirs on top, and they have like raised lettering. I was like, oh my gosh, like were people ever really like that? I mean, I know that it was like a, you know, a lot of it was like they overdid it, but like, did people really do that? I don't know. I'm sure they do. I don't know.
Well, especially men
Yeah,
sometimes.
I guess that's weird, right? I guess women do it too, just in different ways.
In different ways, yeah.
In different, you're right.
Hair,
So
clothing.
yes, bags, stuff like that. You're right. That's right. So I put yes, exaggerated sense of superiority, entitlement, and superficial charm. And that was a big one with Bateman. And I think they did a good job of making Bateman look like what we usually would picture, like that serial killer, like the white male, 28 years old type thing. I don't know. The movie was a little bit freaky, but it hit home for sure. So over here for obsessive compulsive personality disorder, real quick, I put perfectionism, control, rigidity, moral inflexibility. It is not the same as OCD, so I made sure I put that. I'm trying to get it to where I can fit the whole thing in there. It's just not working for me right now. But the evidence for Kohberger I put is reports of him being controlling, hyper-focused on details, so criminology at the moment. But before that, it was, you know, the drug thing or the weight thing or so on and so forth. He's socially awkward but rigid, and possibly some OCPD traits. He's over-controlled, strict, and intense. Do you agree with that? Do you want to add
I definitely
anything?
agree because you know what? Now that I'm thinking about more about like when we talk about his weight loss and drug addiction, it is odd that he hasn't had a relapse in either one of those sectors. You know, like that's
That's
very
right.
odd in today's world. But I think it's not odd in the fact of the OCPD because of his perfectionism. He won't let himself personally fail in those
That's
sectors.
right. That's
So,
right. And again, you guys, because it's something that he has control over. So he was able to control those things. So in an environment where he felt very out of control, especially when it related to being his anything having to do with his identity, right? These were things that he did have control over. And I love that you pointed that out, that we did not, you're right, we did not hear of anything. As a matter of fact, we actually heard that at one point he said to somebody, that you couldn't pay him any amount of money to ever do heroin again. So he not only like kicks the habit, but then becomes like disgusted by it almost. So I totally agree with that. And they're usually very strict and over controlled. For Bundy, I put not really, more impulsive and manipulative, and that it doesn't align well with obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Do you agree, disagree?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then, and you guys, the not the scary thing, but like the tricky thing about this is, or risky thing even, is that we don't always agree. And that's great, because if you just had two people in here all the time that were like, oh yeah, it's the same, then that would be boring for you guys too. So you get to hear us go back and forth. And it's not like a debate. It's just like, we're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Or, oh yeah, good point. But I also think it's tricky too, because I literally just sent this to Dr. Schultz right before we went on. So I have no idea what she thinks about any of this. I was like, she could be reading through this right now and be like, look at this crazy bitch. And she probably did that too, but
No.
that's besides the point. But I know, I'm just kidding. But again, so I didn't like have her like check over it today and tell me if I should make changes. We just don't have time for that because we both work full time. We both have 45 jobs. Okay. So I wouldn't have had time for that anyway. So I think it's good to see that we both are independent thoughts that are able to come together and agree mostly on this stuff. So this is good. So Bateman, I put he's very perfectionistic. He's obsessed with routine, appearance, and order. If you guys remember, they like started out with like his face stuff and all, and then he pulls down the face mask and he does all of his routines and things like that. His exercising was a routine. And then likely, I think he has obsessive compulsive personality traits, though mixed with extreme psychopathy or pathology. I put extreme pathology, just meaning that there was other things that could have also played a role. So what did you think about Bateman when it comes to OCPD?
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Yeah, this is,
He portrayed
I
all
agree
of
with that.
those things, so.
I agree. And then over here, I gave you guys a summary table. I'm not going to go over this because it's literally what we just went over. But instead of putting like all of this stuff in here, I just got right to the end of it and put for like each one of the disorders, each one of the characters, not characters like that, but like meaning people. And then what we saw. So that's there. So this is the one of the ones that I really wanted to get to. So the timeline from traits to crimes. Okay. So I put this together because I wanted people to understand that you don't just wake up one day at 28 and go out and commit these crimes, that there's clearly that there's a, what's the word I'm looking for? That it develops. Yeah, progression. That's the word. It progresses. Progression is what I was looking for. It progresses over time. So let's look at this stage over here. So let's look at childhood real quick. So for Kohberger, he was described as socially awkward in childhood. So remember, these are like those pictures of him when he's at school and he's trying to be in the police cadets or whatever. He was bullied and he has possible OCPD tendencies. And again, you see some of this. The reason you'll see some of the personality disorders, you guys, younger, so we don't diagnose it, but you might see tendencies. So in the beginning, I would call it tendencies. Then in like adolescence or like young adult, I might call it traits. And then if it's still there getting progressively worse, then it might become disordered. And we talked a little bit before about that, so I won't go over how something gets to disordered in today's thing. But this is how I feel about Kohberger and his childhood or things I know. I didn't add in there because I didn't know they went through a bankruptcy, but I think that was in adolescence. So I didn't know where to put that. So I didn't put it, but I should put it wherever it belongs. But I think it might have happened in adolescence. Mm-hmm. And the reason I think it's important, so some people might be like, oh, a bankruptcy, like what the hell does that have to do with anything? It does in the sense of if he was trying to find an identity, this would have been the second time that the parents went there, filed for bankruptcy. And I don't know if you guys remember, but it never occurred to me in one of his TAPA talks. It just out of nowhere, I was going through pictures and was like, why didn't I ever like make this connection before? But in one of his TAPA talks, he talks about how this is his last Christmas at his house. I don't know why I never, like that didn't pop out at me before, but I was like, wait, what? And then so it must have been his adolescence or his teenage years because he was on TAPA Talk. That I went back and I have everything printed out, like the bankruptcies, I printed everything out. And when I compared the dates, I believe that's what was happening at the time. So I believe the parents had to tell the kids because the house might have had to go up for sale, although they were able to keep the house, which was good, right? But they might have had to have the talk with the kids or like Christmas this year isn't going to be as, big as usual, things like that. So it really does have an effect on kids, even though you might not think that it has a direct correlation to the crime. Did I say that right? Or
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there are stressors that every single one of these people probably, I mean, if Kohberger ever admits to this, if it comes to that at some point, hopefully we'll find out what exactly that stressor is that made him decide this was the time to act on his thoughts. But sometimes you just need that one tiny stressor to crack into your, psychopathology.
If I were to, yeah, I agree. And if I were to guess, I would say, and again, this is alleged, that it had to do with him finally losing. Because remember, he kept like getting in trouble for the TA thing. I believe that although I could be wrong. No, I'm wrong. He didn't lose his TA job yet.
He did,
but I think
fully in December. but he was on
Right.
probation
On
all of like
probation.
end of October, November. And
And
so I
he
think that
probably knew in his
definitely
heart.
had a trigger of some
Yes.
sort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Mhm.
Could his trigger, think about it, you guys, if he has obsessive compulsive personality, could his trigger just have been that his birthday was coming up and like it could have been something numerology related? Like, for example, the 1122 King Road is the name of the address. His birthday is 1121. Okay. But on his license plate, it's funny because it says that it's up on 1122, and that's because in Pennsylvania, I don't know how they do it in New Jersey, believe it or not, you think I would. But in Pennsylvania, it's your thing renews, or you have to get it renewed one day after your birthday, which is why some people I think are confusing his birthday with 1122. His birthday is 1121. But it could be something numerology related, you guys, or something that Bundy did. Like Bundy had his first crime at 28. Kohberger turned 29 like the next week. So could it have just been that he wanted to also like, or maybe he had in his head, I'm going to do this at 28. It literally, somebody with OCPD could be hyperfixated on something like that, or rigid about something like that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think also it could be if we're looking at if he has narcissistic personality and he is going downhill because now people are questioning his intelligence. Sometimes I find the narcissistic people to be a lot scarier than your antisocial or something like that because they just snap, right?
It's
So the
so funny you
narcissistic
said
person,
that.
if you insult them, how dare you insult me? No, and they will not even think about it and just go off and end up hurting people or stuff like that. So it could have been something along that line as well.
You're absolutely right. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. I was just seeing what other people are writing.
Mhm.
Yes. Oh, people do think that there's something about the numbers.
Numbers.
So the house
Yeah.
number 1122 on the night of 11/12/22 and the month of wait, say that again. All right, let me see this again. Harlot is scared. I always want to say Scarlett O'Hara whenever I read that. Obviously, that's a play on it, but that's what I always want to say. But all right, so the house number is 1122 on the night of 11, wasn't it 11/13 though, technically?
I don't know.
Because it
Well, I
was
get it because it
after.
was early morning.
Right. But in his head, it could have still been because he didn't go to bed in his head like 1/1/1/2. And then it says in the month of 11. I forgot about that. It was in the month of 11 of the year of 22. I did forget about that.
Mhm.
So literally numerology could have played a role in this for him.
Mhm.
Just if look, this girl says my ex would flip his shit if you ever implied that he couldn't afford something. So yes. So why would that happen if he was a narcissist? Because that would show against his character. So for him, it would be like he's not the man that he pictures what a man should be doing or should be. So that's why somebody would do that, especially if they're a narcissist, right?
Mhm.
So real quick with Bundy, I have charming but odd. And again, this is in childhood. There was a cruelty to animals already in childhood. So that was already documented. He was already shoplifting and lying, which it doesn't mean that Kohberger didn't lie and do those things. It just means that I didn't have enough to write it down to where I felt like it was a definite thing. So that's why I didn't add it. And then for Bateman, I put privileged upbringing, emotionally detached from others. Also remember that at this point, Bundy doesn't know that his sister is his mom yet. Okay. So he doesn't know that yet. In adolescence, for Kohberger, we have increasing isolation, intense interest in crime, strict routines. I literally got this, you guys. I was like, I was so careful with this just because I know people
Can you
come at you.
scroll a
But
little? Sorry.
oh yeah. Oh no, thank you. I'm glad you
You
said
can
that
see it
because
on
if
our
you can't see it,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, there we go. Thank you for telling me that. So in adolescence, right? He's the one that said this. So I didn't even add this with my own words. He literally in his Tappa Talk and in his song that he wrote. Remember, we dissected.
Yep.
If you guys didn't hear it yet, one of the Mondays we dissected his rap song. I think that was a really good live. That was one of my the ones that I liked the most actually.
Yeah.
So So he literally is telling us this. So it wasn't just me saying it. He tells us this in his Sapa Talks. And then Bundy, escalated manipulation, sexual deviance emerging. He like blames a lot of stuff on pornography and stuff. Think about it in today's day and age, you guys. Unfortunately, like little kids could pick up. I'll never forget the first time we had the internet. This is so embarrassing. I wanted sneakers and my dad's like, oh, let me see what they look like. So I was like, yeah. And it was Dick's Sporting Goods, but I typed in Dick's.com. And my dad was like right next to me. Oh my God, I died. I was like, oh my God. I was like trying to get off of it so fast. That's what that just reminded me of. But yeah, but that's the thing. So there's a lot of people that are exposed to that stuff that don't commit crime. So I think for Bundy, he was just trying to come up with excuses.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you really think that watching porn too early made him homicidal?
No.
Right?
Could it have advanced things that were already existent? Sure.
Yes. And how would it advance things? Because we only picture things that we either can imagine happening, right? Because if you can't imagine it, how are you going to picture it in your head? You can't, right? So now if I'm watching porn and let's say I'm watching like Missionary or whatever, and then something else comes in my feed and I'm like, oh, what about that? And then it just gets more like you just keep up in the ante till the next thing you know, it's like violent porn.
Yeah.
And not for everybody. I'm not talking about that for everybody. I'm saying that for Bundy, he blamed a lot of his stuff on being exposed to porn too early. Stephen Stearns, when we do that again, he does the same thing. He tells his mom that he's a product of the 90s because she asked him, she said, Stephen, has this ever happened to you? And he said, no, it hasn't. And like she was literally like just trying to find something to blame it on. And he blamed it on the 90s. And I was like, cuz I grew up in the 90s too. And I haven't done any of those things.
Nope.
At all. None. So I think that again, when we see this, that a lot of this is just an excuse for bad behavior. And then for Bateman and adolescence, surface level charm, obsession with status and appearance. And again, that was because we only knew a little bit there. For early adulthood, I put for Kohberger, studied criminology, possibly narcissistic fixation on control, and quiet but intense. Okay. And then I'll do the three and then I'll ask you if you want to add anything. And then for Bundy, I put law student, highly manipulative. And this is where he starts his killing for Bundy. Bundy did. And then for Bateman, I put Wall Street success, masks psychopathy behind wealth. And that's a big thing. So he uses his success as something charming. Like if I could just take out my what is it, your black card or whatever they call it, and just pay for whatever. So that is status by having a certain credit card or by having no limit on your credit card, things like that. So that really fueled him. So what would you add anything to early adulthood for any of these?
It's not that I would add anything, but I think including the fictional character here really, and the fact that he's affluent in his life. I don't want people to just think that people become this way when all this negativity happens in your early childhood and you're abused or you don't have money or anything like that. It can happen even when you're well off and successful and all of these other things as well, because there is another level of emotional abuse that happens at the affluent level where maybe you're neglected or seen a certain way, or, all of those different types of things. So I know most of the time when we talk about this, these people are, not living great lives as children, and they're being abused or neglected. Nobody loves them. They're having all of these issues. You don't have to have all of these issues. Being rich could be your issue. So I love the fact.
And you guys, that sounds crazy, right? Because my mom used to always say the only people that say that money doesn't buy happiness are people without money. And I'm like, okay, well, that's because you're a narcissist. But also, right? So I also agree with this. So think about it. When we teach about about parenting, you guys, there's four main parenting styles we teach about. And we teach our students that you get like on either extreme, you still get problems. So if you're the friend mom, that you get just as much as problems as if you're very strict and there's no communication type thing. So you get problems on either end. The thing here is finding that middle ground. So setting rules and boundaries, but also having communication. So this is more than you have to be home at 11. This is, hey, look, I know that it's annoying. I was a teenager too. I need you home at 11, not because I don't trust you, but because blah, 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 blah. Do you know what I mean? Or it's the law. You just got your, like whatever it is. But at least the kid then knows why you're doing this. And it's not like they just hate my life and they don't want me to have fun or whatever. But you would also be flexible too, in the sense that, let's say they go to a movie one night and you know the movie's not going to get done till 11:20. The kid says, you know, Mom, do I have to like leave the movie? Or no, absolutely not. Stay at the movie. So again, this is like that back and forth thing. So it's having that healthy medium, but also having rules. So this isn't something that you could do all the time, but once in a while, absolutely. But you would stick with your rules and regulations. And it's very important to be consistent. Consistency is key in parenting. And I think all three of these, without a doubt, at least from what we know about, I see little things in the parenting stuff. And I hate to say that about Kohberger because we don't know as much about his parents. But again, even the lack of rules is enough.
Yep.
Right? So
Yeah,
I'm glad that you said that too. I'm very glad that you said that.
I think his became opportunistic at that point, and that's why we started to see it start in early adulthood. It's the first time he's on his own around people who he starts to be attracted to, and now the opportunity is just there for me. So,
and remember we said how there's like a trigger or whatever for Bundy. I don't know this because I haven't like done it in a while, but wasn't it? So I know there was a girl that he really cared about, and I know that Bundy went after women with brown, long,
yes,
straight hair that was parted in the middle.
She kind of,
He
I
really
guess,
liked this girl, and she like
offended
dumped him,
in
right?
some fashion. Yeah, like it
And
started
that like
because of
humiliated
her.
him.
He was like in love with her apparently, and they ended up separating on bad terms, I guess.
Yes,
And
but then she
kind
winds up dating, she dates somebody, and then they come back together at some point, and he gets her back only to dump her.
yeah,
And she winds up going on to say, like, I was so confused by that. Like his whole thing was that like I was the one that got away, and then he gets her back and dumps her. That is so if you guys
narcissistic.
think about it. Yes, and it's narcissistic and antisocial if you think about it, right? So it's like I'm gonna break this person's heart so that I could feel grandiose again.
Correct.
She made me feel small.
Yep.
And the opposite of feeling grande or big is to feel small. So this person made me feel small. I'm going to win her back with my charm. He went to law school or was like, you know, going to law school. So to him, he got his shit together. He gets her back. He wins her back. She falls madly in love with him. And then poof, he's gone.
Probably
And
why
again,
he's
why?
a sadist. So,
Ooh, maybe, yeah. Yes. And also with Bundy, real quick before we move on to the next one, early adulthood is when he finds out. I don't know if it was late adolescence or early adulthood. Early adulthood would start at 18-ish. So I don't know when he finds out exactly that his mom is his sister.
I don't remember actually.
But you guys, if any of you ever adopt out there or, you know, whatever the situation is, our boss even has 3 adopted kids. It is better to let the kids know from the beginning that like we chose you. Like you're different than our kids only in the fact that we picked you out. Like we wanted you so bad that we did A, B, C, and D to have you. Where a lot of times I feel like when people keep it a secret and then the kid finds out years later, it's almost like by keeping it a secret, you put a negative connotation on it. Like, why was it a secret? Like what should be like shameful almost, like why was I a secret or why? So I think that they did him a disservice by letting him grow up thinking that that his mom was his sister, because then she winds up getting married and moves out or whatever and takes him with her. Yeah. So then he winds up having to get reacclimated with a new stepdad and stuff like that. Just
I do think it was mainly because of the times where it was something that was unaccepted. But either way, I definitely think that triggered a lot of his issues.
My dog, sorry. It's crazy. No, I totally agree. And then then I put, so I stopped it at early adulthood because at 28, they're already killing all of them. So, or allegedly already killing. So I didn't go into like middle adulthood because they didn't make it that far before this started. So then I did before crime, after crime. So for before crimes, I put for Kohberger that he allegedly stalked or surveilled, rather, the victims. He may have planned to feel powerful. Again, probably because he was humiliated at some point or felt very small. And again, the opposite of feeling small is to feel grandiose. And then I put before the crime for Bundy, he did a lot of victim hunting, which is almost that same thing, like surveilling. We don't know yet the extent of Kohberger. So I have a feeling that in a year from now, we might come back with a new chart that is much more filled in because we just know more. Like there's so much on the gag order. So just remember that a lot of this is just based off of what we see and know at this point. Okay. And then so in other words, he could have been hunting as well. We just don't know it yet because we don't have enough information. So maybe in a year from now, I update this with, instead of allegedly stalked, I put hunting victims. Like you just don't know. Or I put there was no stalking at all because we find out the opposite. I am totally open to whatever the evidence says. I am going with the evidence and not just because as of right now, I think he's guilty. I still think he's guilty, but if somebody was to prove me wrong, I'm down for it. And then for Bateman, I put cold calculated murders, maintains high functionality, a functional facade. So we see that as well. I don't think people realize how many successful business people are antisocial, but they never go on to kill anybody. So again, you guys think of these personality disorders. I think one of our main things tonight is to show you guys that there really is a spectrum, that you don't have to be exactly alike to be a narcissist or exactly. So there's many core things that are alike, but then there could be different characteristics that make you different, right? Would you add anything to any of that?
No. Bundy, okay. I think is the only one that's really different in the before crimes, because I think he was a red flag from early on. He definitely had conduct disorder, and all of that kind of stuff from the very
beginning. Didn't Kohberger have conduct disorder?
I'm not sure yet, because I feel like it's not that I don't think he was fully getting in trouble or going against,
Didn't he have to finish high school at home or something?
I don't remember.
We have to look that up.
You'd have to look it up.
If somebody knows, let me know.
I don't remember anything that was strict conduct disorder. Like they just thought he was a loner.
Well, I remember that he wanted to be,
and he was detached.
No, you're right. You're right. But I do remember that he wanted to be a cop in that cop program. But I think, if I'm correct, that and again, somebody, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that he did something negative that was related to a female in the program. So they switched him to the HVAC, and that's what his dad does. And I really think that them rejecting him then and then putting them in HVAC almost felt like a punishment to him, like a double punishment. So not only was he taken out of the cop thing, he was then put into what his dad is, which I don't think he wanted to be. Okay. I think he wanted to be the opposite of. And that's my opinion. That is not Dr. Schultz's opinion. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's just my opinion. So wait, somebody said, I think he got kicked out of cop school. Yes. And had to take the HVAC or something. We said that at the same time, but I can't remember what the source was.
We know why. And it was for assaulting another.
We don't know that it was that his hands or anything, but he did something negative. So whether he said something, intimidated someone, but it had something to do with a female.
Okay.
He was put into a class with no girls.
Okay.
So doesn't that say something, right?
Yeah, I still wouldn't say it's conduct disorder though. I'd need to hear what the actual offense was, because it was only a one-time offense. So
yeah, but was it bad enough that he got kicked out of the program?
Yeah, I don't know if it's bad enough they would consider it conduct disorder.
And wasn't he in? I don't know if. All right. Well, we'll look into that. We'll figure that one out for you guys, and we'll come back on that one. And then after the crimes for Kohberger, I put allegedly returned to the scene he had a calm demeanor, and the reason I put that is because at 10:30 we see him with thumbs up with a big ass smile. He didn't look very scared there, right? So also I put that possibly reliving the fantasy. So this is what people don't get. A lot of people think that he went back to the crime scene because of the sheath and that he was going to go in and get it. I don't think that's at all what he was doing, because I honestly think that by 9:30 or whenever it was that he got back there, he had to have thought that there was definitely cops there by then. So I don't think that he went back there for the knife sheath. I think he went back there because he wanted to see the havoc that he caused. He went back and nobody was called yet. I wonder if he was shocked to see that nobody had been there yet.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see someday.
I think it's a little bit of both, probably, if he realized that it was even missed. But I think he definitely wanted to see the chaos as well.
Yes, because it lets them relive it.
For me, I think I really hope we find out more information, but I don't know if he'll ever come really true clean. But I almost feel like he imagined a relationship with a couple of these people and like had a fantasy going the whole time before the killings even happened. And so for
I
me,
said that too before. I agree with you.
The fantasy after the fact as well. So,
And you guys, I think I tell you this often. Dr. Schwartz is very busy, so she doesn't get to come to the other lives too. But so I don't know if she's heard me say this before, but I've said that same thing before. So I agree with that 100%. 100%. You guys out there have to be careful. Even us, we come here on Monday nights and stuff like that. There could be somebody that watches us on Monday nights that thinks that we're speaking to them type thing, or that like this speaks to them, and that, so you just never know. And you might think to yourself like, oh, I'm not a content creator, it's fine. But it's not. So like, this is why some people don't put their kids on social media and stuff anymore, because it's not about, you and your family seeing the kid. It's about the person that you don't want to see your kid that then creates a fantasy. So think of like your 17-year-old being followed by somebody. We watched something on this 12 Gauges channel once, and it was crazy because the girl was like so careless about it, but she straight had a stalker, and it was just so scary. And I made my kids watch it because I was like, she was like taking it as a joke. And I was like, this girl could have gotten killed at any point. Like, and I think the guy wound up going on to like hurt somebody, and it could have been her. So all of you out there, just be vigilant about that. Don't think that just because there's not somebody that's contacting you specifically, that there couldn't be somebody. But also don't live in fear to where you don't go online and stuff like that either. Just be aware. That's all. Be aware.
Yep.
And then after the crimes, I put for Bundy, continued killing, enjoyed media attention, and acted normal. So like nothing ever happened, which is why serial killers get away with it. And then for Bateman, I put shows no guilt, continues a dual life, and increasingly delusional. So he gets more and more delusional. I think with Bateman, one of the things that I wanted to say too was, I watched this whole interview with the person that wrote the book, and they said that the person said they did a really good job with doing the movie and stuff, but that a lot of people wondered if like a lot of people thought that maybe she made it to where he had like schizotypal, or like maybe, or even delusional disorder, where maybe he was like imagining it. And she said that that was not what she was trying to do. So she said it was supposed to be like up to the reader or the viewer to make up that choice of whether he thought, or whether at the end it was all delusion, or whether those crimes really happened. So what do you guys think if you watched that movie? Do you think that he thought it was all delusion, or do you think that he thought it was all real? And the only reason the delusion part comes up for me is because towards the end of the movie, he finds out that the guy that he thinks he killed with the cop coming isn't dead.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So I don't know what you guys think. I just thought that that was interesting though, but who knows? So we're almost done here. So I have real quick, because there is one that I really want to get to, but I think we have 2 more and then we're done. Yes. Okay. And then you guys could leave class. Okay. I always feel like I do that. And I'm like, meanwhile, we're on YouTube. We're not in class right now. So people don't have to stay here. I just said we're almost done, like as if people can't hang up if they don't want to leave. Duh. We work too much, you guys. All right. So for over here, I put, oh wait, who tried to put, oh yes. Oh my gosh. I forgot about that part, Truth. He tried to put a cat in the ATM. You can't put a cat in an ATM. Bateman. So I'm wondering, I think I picked up on something else there. So I'm wondering if he thought that was all delusion. However, I think it was supposed to, like the author said, that it was supposed to be more on how the reader or the viewer themselves perceived it, more so than a correct answer to that. So I don't know. It's more of a thought of what you think. I don't know. So for trait escalation timeline, what I did was I then go on to map these, which you can't see as well because I did it smaller. So maybe I'll do this and then I'll just scroll down. So what I did here was I put the disorder or the trait in green going down on the left. And then across here, I did childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, and then crime onset, so that we could just recap all of this real quick here. So with the first one, this is antisocial or psychopathy. And this is in general, you guys. So this is not related to any of the people that we spoke about tonight. This is just in general. And we went over this already, so I'm not going to get into it too much. I just want you guys to see how it escalates in childhood through adolescence, early adulthood, so on and so forth. So with antisocial, in childhood, you have minor rule breaking and lying. This is the time where kids will really, they try out these different hats. Like they see if they're a good liar. If they're a good liar, they might do it just to make their friends laugh and stuff like that. But what's happening is they start to realize that they can create this facade and that they're good at getting over on people. And you might have somebody who just takes it as a joke and then they never do it again. Or somebody else that's like, oh, wow, I was pretty good at that. And then they just do it again and again and again. So let's say we escalate to adolescence. We have risk taking or disregard for others. In early adulthood, we see lack of empathy and manipulation. And then crime onset, we see aggressive or planned impulsive violence. So again, it's like one or the other. It's either like planned out or it could be very impulsive. So that's what we see here. And we see that difference in some of the people that we talked about tonight. Do you want to add anything to antisocial here as far as?
Not so much add anything, but I do want people just to see how
Yes, that's what I meant by add.
Why we do not diagnose till they're adult, because if we look at the childhood and the adolescent trait, those are normal childhood and adolescent traits as well. So sometimes this is what makes it difficult for us in psychology and counseling, because there are so many things that are just normal developmental stages. And then we have to pick apart to see, well, what is it related to that I can really sit here and say it's more antisocial than just an adolescent being an adolescent. And so that's why
that's such a good point.
Until they're older, because every teenager risk takes. Every child lies.
You're right.
And breaks,
No, you're right.
Fibs
you're right. And I think a lot of this too, though, goes to what happens after that occurs. So I think like when you just don't care at all, it's like you let the kid get away with lying and stuff. So when there's no consequences, the kid winds up going to this next stage and starts to take risks and disregards others. So maybe now they're lying about something, but at the expense of somebody else's feelings, but they don't take that into consideration. And then that leads to that lack of empathy and then manipulation. And then, so there literally is like an escalation over time with all of these that you guys should be aware of. But again, I'm glad that you brought that up, because somebody could lie, get in trouble for it, or never get caught. And it made them feel so shitty, or they felt, regret or remorse, and they don't want to lie because they didn't like how it made them feel. And then there's other people that are, like I said before, like, oh, I can manipulate somebody doing this. And so they, and then for narcissistic traits, and again, I did the disorder and traits here because you might have traits of something, but not be disordered. So just so people know, again, you have to meet certain criteria. So there's a criteria for the symptoms, the duration, and does it interfere with at least 2 areas of daily functioning? Why is that the case? Because if you only had these things at school, if we remove you from school, they should all go away. But if it's happening at school and at baseball, or at school baseball and at home, and now it's less likely to be the environment and more likely to be a trait of some sort that we need to look at. Do you agree with that?
Yep.
I don't know how you could stay quiet. I guess because I have ADHD, I try. All right. So narcissistic, in childhood, we have self-centeredness, insecurity. And then but again, we have adolescent egocentrism as part of our developmental psychology textbook. So like Dr. Schultz was saying, self-centered insecurity is pretty common for most people in childhood, which is why we have to watch how it continues throughout the rest of the stages. So then in adolescence, we have grandiosity and superiority. A lot of kids feel this, right? If you're on a football team or a cheerleading team and you guys are the number 1 team, you might feel superior to everyone. So there's some parts of this, you guys, that are completely normal. I think anxiety is a good one. Anxiety is not a bad trait until it becomes disordered or becomes disproportionate to whatever it is that you're getting anxious about. So, but if it weren't for anxiety, if we didn't have anxiety, we wouldn't have cures for diseases and vaccines and stuff like that. It's someone's anxiety that kept them up all night. It was my anxiety about coming, tonight prepared with something that kept me up when I should have probably been sleeping, making these charts, right? But that's why tonight I now have a put together show for you guys, but that's because my anxiety drove it. Now, when would it be abnormal? Let's say I stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning doing this and then called out tomorrow. So my job that pays me money, like I don't get paid for this. So my job that does pay me money, if I'm now missing work because I stayed up till 4 a.m., now it's interfering with daily functioning. And again, does that happen when a normal thing? Absolutely. You know what I mean? I never have called out because of it, but have I suffered the next day? Absolutely. Where I felt tired, but I had to like just keep myself. Sure. But again, that just reminds me the next night to go to bed earlier because I don't want to feel like that again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Nope.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. And then for narcissistic in early adulthood, they exploit others and crave admiration. I think about Kohberger with this one, how I think being a TA makes him feel admired by the students and stuff. But I don't know. I don't know if he craves admiration. I don't know if that's.
I don't know, but
maybe
I definitely could have exploited others in that sense too. Like he was a harsh grader.
I think that's what I'm trying to say.
And so for him, it'd be like, well, you can't argue with me because I'm the TA. I have more education than you, and I can give you whatever grade I want. So it doesn't have to be, destroying every single part of a person either when you say exploit. But just
I'm so glad you said that.
Bad grade, you can exploit their negative emotions. That gets him fired up.
Yes, you said that so well. You said that so well. That's why I'm so glad you're here too. So you guys, that is so true. Think about that. So just by knowing more, and again, think about it. He obviously knows more than his students, right? Because he's now in his doctorate program. He's teaching an undergrad program. And again, I'm not like downing that. I'm just saying that at the graduate level, he does know more than them. But he's exploiting now other people's anxieties and things like that, right? So in a way, some of these students, it is our job to push you a little bit, right? So we don't want to just, I mean, I guess sometimes people just, go through, but a lot of teachers will try to push you to be like your best version of yourself. It's not that he was doing that. He was like picking like at people's papers and stuff, but using that as an excuse, I guess, to like keep his job longer. Like, oh, I just expected more. The one kid literally said that he expected us to be doctorate students at the undergraduate level. So, but again, that could have just been the way it was received by others. I think the intent was, I want you to admire my thought process and be more like me or ask me questions because I am the authority on the topic.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. And then in crime, one set, control driven or attention seeking crime. And I think for Kohberger, he was very control driven, in my opinion.
Facts.
And then for OCPD traits, I just put, and again, this is all in general. Oh, look, I have to fix that. Perfectionism, rigidity, and then what was it? Oh, I could say it here. And then in adolescence, over control, moral inflexibility. Then in early adulthood, rules over empathy. That's a big one, I think, with Kohberger too. And then we have, if present, adds planning and cold logic. So if this is present, meaning if you do have these traits, because again, like Dr. Schultz was saying, you could get through to here and then it could be different. Like a lot of it could just be normal behavior if things go a different way. But if this really is present, it would make sense that he planned this or that he was very logical. I think that's something I want to make sure I put out there with Kohberger more than any of the three that I've seen so far tonight. I think that he saw things as not as subjective, but as objective. So like as a science. So like he broke everything down into a science. So it was like he tried to figure things out in that way. And I think that that has to do with OCPD traits. That was just my opinion. Do you want to add or say anything before I go to psychopathy?
No.
Okay. I added psychopathy here, you guys, which technically is antisocial personality disorder. However, this is more of that dark triad psychopathy that people often talk about, because remember, you guys could be living with somebody with antisocial personality disorder and just not realize it. So just because somebody has antisocial personality disorder or just because somebody's a narcissist, it doesn't mean that they're going to go on to be a serial killer. There's plenty of people with antisocial. As a matter of fact, I believe it's like more than 1% of the population type thing, and not all of them are in jail, right? So there's plenty of people that walk amongst us. Some people are think about it. If you're really good at your job, like let's say you're a good business owner. Let's say you're very charming and stuff like that. Somebody with antisocial personality disorder and even a little bit of narcissism makes for a very good boss.
Yeah.
What's that?
It makes for a good
Yeah, right.
business person, boss.
Business person. Yes.
Every president
I was going to say that, but didn't know if I
is
should.
narcissistic in nature because you have to be. You know, you have to think you're the best or else you won't be able to get the job done. You know, so
Yep.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
agree
I
with that
think it's
100%.
good to talk about the fact that these are not mutually exclusive with, you know, crime. So
Yes.
if we looked at all murderers, most murderers, the majority of them could probably get these diagnoses, but not everyone who has these diagnoses will be murderers. So
Absolutely. So again, you guys could be living with a sociopath right now and just they'll never go on to hurt anybody type thing. But maybe, you know who I think of, or I'll tell my students, think of like Scrooge. I think of Scrooge when I think of like I used to think of other people, but I don't want to like, isolate. Like I don't want to use presidents because I feel not. I do think that was a great example, but I mean individual presidents because I don't want like that's just more of an opinion thing. But when it comes to Scrooge, I use Scrooge because it's a fictional character. But think about Scrooge when like the family doesn't have enough money to eat and like Tiny Tim and like Scrooge could give a shit. And it's not until he gets, the fear of the ghost and stuff that he changes. But like he was a very good business person. He was rich. And a lot of it was because he was antisocial. He didn't give a shit about Tiny Tim's illness or the fact that they didn't have food for Christmas. Like, and again, I know that's a very childish type example, but it's an example that I think is universal. So most people know the story, which is why I use it as an example. And then, so for psychopathy, this is more like that criminal behavior. So this one, we see callousness and no empathy in childhood. So I think of Beth. Did I ever introduce you to little Beth?
I don't think so.
Oh, Anya. Oh my God. I can't believe I never. Oh my God. Okay. I'm going to be sending you a video after this.
Okay.
So with Beth, okay, you clearly see, and anybody that's been on my live streams before, I actually did a live about her. And on YouTube, it's called Child of Rage, but I think there was like even a movie made or whatever, but it's based off of a real story. And I have a real problem with the whole story, but that's a different story in itself, like a different live. But off air, Anya, I'm going to tell you about it because, oh my God. But anyway, it literally shows how in childhood you can have children that are callous and have no empathy. So in this, if anybody wants to watch it, you guys, it's in my lives. Just go to my live stream and it might be called Psychology Talk, but if you just like hover over it, you'll see like a little girl. It's that video. If you watch it, it explains everything type thing. But with Beth, for example, she was being essayed by her dad, and she winds up getting adopted, her and her brother do, by this family. And because she was getting essayed by her biological father, she wanted to harm other boys. So she would like pull her brother's penis and like stick her fingers up his anus and like hurt this kid. And he would like freak out, tell her to stop. And the mom said, like, because now the mom's talking to like the therapist about it. And they're like, what did you do? And she's like, we told her, like, what did he say? And he said no. And what did you do? And she said, I kept doing it. And because she wanted, and they say why? And she says, because I wanted to kill him. And then she also says, I want them, because the guy said, who would you kill? And she says, mommy, daddy, and John, and that's her brother. And the guy says, how would you do it? And she said, I would do it at night so that they could feel me or hear me, but they can't see me. It says so much. At one point, the mom tells her not to touch the baby birds because if you touch the birds, that the mother bird comes back, and if they smell somebody else's scent, they leave the nest type thing. So instead of that, keeping her away, she goes over, like pretty much cracks the eggs, plays with the little birds, and breaks all of their necks, including the mom. So, and this was during childhood, and this is all a 100% true thing that occurred. Like this is not based on a real story. The actual footage is of her. So, right. So it's not even like based on her story. It's her. So it's in my lives, but I could also send you a link. But she shows callousness and no empathy. The good news is that with equestrian therapy and inpatient therapy, and they did a lot of therapy with like animals, they were able, I think Beth is a great example of somebody who, if she didn't get intervention in adolescence, could have turned out 100% to have killed even in adolescence. If somebody didn't stop her, she would have killed her brother. Like she literally stole like the knives from the drawer. Like she had it all planned out. So I think that you guys, it says callous, no empathy, but just know that although it's rare, there are some kids that can commit a murder at a young age. It can happen. It's rare, but it can happen. In adolescence, you often see shallow charm, thrill seeking. This is where we start to see like the fire setting. And you guys, when we say fire setting, you might be thinking of like the first time you and your friends found a box of matches and you were like, oh, what happens if we light the whole box at once? Like, that's not what we're talking about here. This is more like arson. Like I set fire to the old people's home and then watching the bushes as they struggle to get out and see if they could get out on, like, it's like there's malice behind it. So it's like, you know, or skinning your sister's cat and killing it and like just hiding in the closet, or having something video to see her reaction and getting thrill seeking out of that. Like that's, imagine that, right? But there are people that will do this. And then in early adulthood, you often see a dual life, emotionally cold, and then enjoys harming others without remorse in the crime onset. So I think it's important to also point this out because we did show a lot of the charm and the superficial charm and stuff like that. But think of like a Rex Humerman. I don't know if you know who he is. He's the one in Long Island serial killer. He's about to go on trial soon. You should look into him if you haven't already. But with him, he gives more of that like scary type of serial killer where like Ted Bundy, I feel like Ted Bundy, if you had Ted Bundy and Rex Humerman in the room together, you would run to Ted Bundy for like safety from Rex Humerman, not realizing that you're running into the arms of another serial killer. Like, but that's how different this could be, you guys. But they were both very much antisocial and they were both very much narcissistic, but so it displays differently. So this is our last one. Okay. So this is the last one. So I did a psychological table. This is the one that I'm most proud of all of them. I saved the best for last. So I'm going to make it wide and then just go down because you don't have to see the one before to see, the one after. So let me just go through this real quick. I put the categories on the left. I did Kohberger, Bundy, and Bateman. I remind everybody that it's alleged, real, fictional. And then let's go through them real quick. Professional, personal. For Kohberger, I put criminology PhD student, Bundy, law student, political volunteer, Bateman, Wall Street businessman. So they all have things that you might aspire to be, like a student, a lawyer, a Wall Street businessman. Their social style. For Kohberger, I put quiet, awkward, isolated. For Bundy, I put charismatic and manipulative. For Bateman, I put superficially charming, emotionally empty. If at any point, Dr. Schultz, you want to add something or say something, just stop me. And then that way I could let you say it so that I don't have to ask you each time, like, do you want to add anything? So for emotional traits, for Kohberger, I put low empathy, detached. And again, this is reported and it's reported by him. So I put reported, but in all seriousness, he's the one that reported it. And then Bundy, no guilt, very manipulative. And then Bateman, completely disconnected from emotions altogether. And then for Kohberger, for criminology knowledge. So how much do they know about crimes? How much do they know about how to get away with things, stuff like that? So for Kohberger, I put he was very academic. As a matter of fact, I think he made everything in his life a science, even if it wasn't academic. He's a PhD study of criminal justice. So he obviously has knowledge that maybe the general public might not have without some of the classes. He's taken a lot more classes than I ever did in criminal justice, right? So, so he's learned about crime scenes, stuff like that. He actually did a whole assignment that I'd love to get my hands on. If anybody can get their hands on it or knows where to find it, please, please, please email it to me. It's Jaime Vona at Gmail. It's Jaime. My mom spelled it that way, so I can never get a toothbrush or anything. Fucked me up. But anyway, Jaime Vona at gmail.com. If you guys could send that to me, that would be amazing. And then for Bundy, I put no guilt. Oh, no, sorry. I was at the wrong one. Criminology, some legal criminal justice study. And then for Bateman, minimal, not a crime expert. So they didn't really mention anything about being a crime expert in the movie. So that's why I came to that conclusion. Then for behavioral traits, for Kohberger, I put methodical, detailed focus, potentially perfectionistic. I totally wholeheartedly believe that. And then for Bundy, I put opportunistic but clever. And he was a charming predator. 100%. And then for Bateman, I put highly ritualized. He was a perfectionist and violent. I think this one is important, you guys, because the behavior traits are what actually is where you go from making something a thought to making it an action or something that you can't take back after, right? So I think that this is an important one because you see that Kohberger is very clever, just like Bundy's clever, but he's a perfectionist like Bateman's character. But you could see how, Bundy is clever like Kohberger, but he's not so you see how they all share different things and then they don't share some things.
Yeah.
And that's, again, the whole point of this is to show the progression of or the spectrum that personality disorders are.
So I think that trait.
I was going to say, I think you were going to say something good.
I think that trait just got me a little bit more on the narcissistic thing because I'm wondering why he's so stupid as a criminal.
Kohberger? Because he thought he could get away with it. He thinks he's smarter than everybody.
It's like now triggering me to agree more with the narcissistic thing because
I told you I would get you to cross the line eventually.
Because you're such a perfectionist, but at the same, and if that was the case, then you should have had every detail like dotted, and you had one crime possibly, and you got caught,
and he got caught.
Now, granted, I don't want to say that Bundy was smart because it was a different time. If there was, I think
Bundy he escaped jail at some point.
Yeah, he would have gotten caught a lot earlier if we had social media and stuff like that. So
you are right about that.
Yeah.
You're right about that. I think social media is why we're going to see a lot less serial killers than ever before, which is a good thing. And again, it's just
time today.
It's hard. You literally but that's the thing. You think that Kohberger should have known better to leave his phone home, like of all the things, and not to take his car. Like two of like the main. But if you think that you're that superior. And I also believe that he thought this too in Moscow because he's coming from Pennsylvania, right? So we have like on the East Coast, we're very like, especially in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, I could say we're very academic oriented here, right? So I think he went out to the other side of the country-ish and he was like, I have this cloud forensics intelligence that you guys can't even imagine yet because you're like a rural place and I'm just going to blow your mind with all of my information, not realizing that they've already known how to do this for years. So I think like even in that, like, I think we're going to find out that he didn't get his internship even because I don't think he could read the room. Like they already know about crowd forensics. That's how they caught, like part of the way that they caught you, but his own narcissism can't get him to see that because he thinks that he's just smarter than everybody else. So I'm glad that you're starting to see a little bit. You're not all the way there yet, but you're starting to see. Yeah. She's starting to see the narcissism, you guys. I'll get her over the line. And then for planning and control, for Kohberger, he had high planning and control. All three of these guys were high in planning and controlling in my eyes. So for Kohberger, I put suspected premeditation, surveilling or stalking, returning to the scene. For Bundy, I also put high. I put stalked and manipulated victims. And then for Bateman, I put high structured life and controlled skills. So I believe they were all highly planned and controlled, even though Kohberger made stupid mistakes. I think that he thought it was completely planned and controlled, right? And then for motivation, we don't know what Kohberger's motivation is. I have a feeling it could have to do with his ego, fantasy, power, intellectual thrill. Because again, if he sees everything as a science, this would be such an intellectual thrill to him. And then going forward, if he had then becomes a teacher, which I think was his goal, he could then present something like this as a criminology teacher, as like your final paper. And it could be about the Idaho 4 and you breaking down the case and giving your opinions on what you think happened type thing. And then imagine at that point, he really would be the arbiter of truth. Like that literally would make him the most informed about that. If he did this and got away with it, he would be the one that would be most informed about that particular topic. So it would almost be like he finally fit what he was feeling or thought he should be feeling, if that makes sense. And then for Bundy, I put power, control, gratification, and sadism. And then for Bateman, I put ego, boredom, dominance, and impulsivity. So do you agree with all them so far?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, moral code, none reported, no moral restraint, no moral skills for thrill. So, or kills for thrill. So again, for all of these, again, for Kohberger, we have none reported. So we don't, I'm not saying that he never went to church or believe, I don't know what his beliefs are, but I think we're going to find that there's no moral code, especially if you're guilty of something like this. And then personality disorders, bless you, personality disorders. I've already told you what I think about Kohberger with the OC. I put possible OCPD, NPD, emerging antisocial. See, this is the thing. I'm not convinced that he was fully antisocial, even though if he did this, he had to have been. But I even see narcissism more so than that. So I think that it's interesting how we both are, see that. I think we're both pointing out things to each other that's making the other one see things that maybe we wouldn't have seen on. And then schizoid personality traits. And then for Bundy, I put diagnosed traits of antisocial, narcissistic, and psychopathy. And then for Bateman, I put extreme narcissism, obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So think of all his routines, and then psychopathy. And then example behaviors for this, because I knew people would want example behaviors. So for Kohberger, I put allegedly surveilled victims before the attack and returned to the crime scene. For Bundy, I put used charm to lure victims, faked injuries, and perform violent acts. And then for Bateman, killed colleagues, strangers, and was obsessed with routines and appearance. So that they were all example behaviors of the things that I was claiming here. And then empathy level, none reported for Kohberger. I put self-reported there because he literally tells us in the Tappa Talk that he has zero empathy, that he feels no emotion, that he feels like a piece of meat. Do you guys remember that, right? And think about it. By taking away the humanity from somebody, it's easier. If I see you as non-human, it's easier for me now to do something to you that shouldn't be human. I always tell people, I know this sounds crazy, but if anybody ever steals you or like kidnaps you, tell them as much about your life as you possibly can. Humanizing yourself is the exact opposite of what they want you to do. So by humanizing yourself, you no longer might fit their fantasy that they had about you, if that makes sense. So start I don't know, word vomiting everything you could think of about yourself. Be so annoying that they drop you off. I'm just kidding. Not that annoying. You don't want them to
show them interest in them too.
Yes, fake it. That's a great one. That.
So I've heard a lot of times where they, the first one got away because they did that. And so
that's right.
Every survivor who's gotten away, it's because they showed interest in them. They told them about them, and it just changed their point of view.
A girl in Philadelphia was taken, and we have cameras everywhere. So the police were eventually able to track it down. But there was a good 2 hours that she was taken, and everybody was thinking the worst, obviously. The reason they found her alive is because she started making herself personalized and then started to show interest in him and was asking him questions about his life, which he then started to share. And when they found them, they were in a parking lot talking. And I believe his gun and everything was down on the side, he wasn't even holding it anymore. So she made him feel comfortable enough that he disarmed. But again, let's say now he gets away with this, which he didn't, he got arrested, but let's say he gets out of jail or whatever, he'll never make that mistake again. So he'll never let somebody else do that to him. So at first, like Dr. Schultz is saying, they don't recognize it as a tactic, but once you checkmate them, it's that will never happen again, which is also why they micromanage, like I was saying earlier.
There's a serial killer named Israel Keys, and he's dead now, but he was super famous back in 2012, and his first got away, and he regrets letting her go. But she was like, if you would have just asked me out, I would have went out with you. You're a good-looking guy. And that just completely threw him off. And he's like, go now before I kill you. And she ran for her life, and she was his only survivor.
That is a great example, right? And again, if you guys think about it, there was a survivor from Bundy, but she wasn't supposed to survive. Through the grace of God or whatever, she survived. So I think he thought oh, the lights came on from one of her sorority sisters coming home from a date, and that scares him off. But I think he thought he beat her to death. She just happened to survive, thank God. But again, you guys, the people that usually get away at first, so you never know if this is somebody's first offense or how far they've taken it, because you have to remember, it usually starts let's say there was a sexual, if there was a sexual motive of some sort, this might start out as the R word, right? And then get and then eventually turn into, the ultimate taking your life type thing. But again, it builds, like we were saying before. But like you were saying, if I let you get away that first time, I'm not going to make that mistake again. So the next time somebody says it to me, I automatically say it as, oh, like almost, it might even make them more pissed off, because it's like, oh, you think I'm dumb? Like you're going to try to get over on me? Somebody else already did that. So, but I would say if you're going to die anyway, try it. Just try to make them feel like you're fascinated by them and stuff like that, and you might have a chance. As far as fantasy life for Kohberger, there's possible, if guilty, rich internal fantasy. I think he had a lot of fantasy. I think that he fantasized, like you said earlier, about having a relationship with some of these people, whether he had one or not, or whether they even knew he was alive. And then for Bundy, fantasized about domination and power. I think Kohberger did a little bit too about power. And then for Bateman, I put constant internal monologue, reality blurred with fantasy. And then for public image, for Kohberger, I put studious, quiet, and academic, which was very different from what he was seen as in childhood and adolescence, right? So he was seen more as a bully, somebody who used drugs or had an eating disorder. So it was like the opposite of. So he wound up being so rigid and self-controlled that he made himself this studious academic that he saw that he wanted to become. And then for Bundy, I put respected, attractive, socially skilled. So I think that's where they differ, is their social skills. So I feel like Kohberger lacks social skills, but not in an autistic type way, more in a schizoid type way, where he doesn't really need those social skills. But you could also say that Bundy, he wasn't trying to make friends. He just used his ability to be charming to manipulate others' emotions so that he could then harm them or get what he wanted type thing. So although they're very different, they both have to do with the fact of a public image. So I hope people see that, where with Bateman, it's wealthy, successful, fashion conscious. So if you see with all three of these, they look very different, but they're all very much the same. So a public image was important to all three of them, even though their three public images were different, if that makes sense. Did I say that okay? Or is there a different way?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Perfect. And then we just have the last thing, killer type. So if proven guilty for Kohberger, he organized, controlled, cold, ego-driven. For Bundy, I put organized serial killer, so sadistic, opportunistic. And then for Patrick Bateman, the fictional character, I put symbolic killer. He was egotistical, detached, and nihilistic. Kohberger was even detached, right? He said that he was detached. That was part of his Tappa Talk, is that or like depersonalization. Yeah. But we are done with my whole thing. I can't believe we got through it all.
It was
so I'm
great.
going to stop sharing so we can both come up here. Does anybody have any questions or anything before we go? So Bundy had more talent in mimicking. That was the thing that I was saying, that what Truth just said. So it is very normal for somebody like this to mimic you. Okay. Put the essay doc on her Patreon. I have no idea, but if anybody has access to it, please hook me up. I have all the Stephen Stern's audios that I'm going to put out there for everybody too. I know I promised that before, but I want to put that all out there. But anyway, I need to find that I have to find that thing and send it to you. Apparently he did like a whole project on, I think like they were allowed to create the scenario, and it was about a knife and a female that gets murdered, and about the crime scene and how the person gets away with not leaving evidence. It's just very telling of the situation he's in. But I want to read it. I didn't.
He studied for this, which to make sure that, let me take all of these ideas and then figure out what my thing is, kind of mentality.
I agree. And then he was hoping that, again, because I guess this is where, again, it was his DeSales criminology final. Thank you for telling me that. I'll try to look that up, because I didn't know exactly which school he did it in, like if it was his bachelor's, master's, whatever. So that'll help me a little bit. But if anybody gets it, again, remember Jaime Vona at Gmail, and it's JAIME. Well, it's right there on the screen. So if anybody finds it, please send it to me. But you guys were amazing tonight. Again, remember, these people mimic your behavior, which is why, like, if you look at Lori Daybell even right now, right? She just did 3 different interviews, and she looks like and sounds like a different person in all 3. That's because she's mimicking or giving the person that is interviewing her what they want. right? So
Yeah.
it's like if I could give you what you want and I mimic what you're doing, you're more likely to feel like we have a connection because it's like, oh, look, she's just like me or he's just like me, not realizing that the person is doing it on purpose and that that's not really who they are. They're doing it so that they could get over on you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you would add before we hang up?
No.
I can't believe everybody stuck with us. That was awesome, you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Oh, this is amazing. And so many people are so thankful. I get messages all the time. Like we have so many like here right now, but a lot of people catch it when they call them the replay crew, which I absolutely love. That's what helps me too. And all of you guys being here. So thank you all, especially to you guys being here. But even people that watch it on the replay, like I was so surprised the other night. Somebody asked me like a personal question about how I got into true crime and I started telling a personal story and like my voice cracked at one point and I got so many messages. And what I took from that was, wow, people like listen that long. Like if you got to the end of this, like, you know what I mean? So I'll keep coming back as long as I'm helping even 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like if we can make a difference, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel. But you guys, please like if you haven't yet. And subscribe if you haven't yet. I'm not monetized. Hopefully one day I will be. And hopefully someday I'd be able to like, I don't know, get a new computer so I could stay online. No, I don't even care about being monetized. But if I ever was, just know that I would hook Dr. Schultz up. But we still have a lot of time. I need so many hours. So if any of you want to be like a true hero, go to bed with my playlist on to get me hours. I have to get to so many hours before. So there's like all these different hoops you have to jump through. So I just want to get there because I feel like I could really help people because once you get monetized, they like put you in the algorithm differently than they would if not. And I would be the type that would give back as much as I could. But anyway, it was great to see you guys. And I'm loving these, especially the ones with Dr. Anya too. See, I told you they love you. I was telling her earlier. Somebody last week said that that you were funny. I've gotten a lot of great compliments about you. So great job. You're doing awesome.
I have fun.
You're awesome. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Anya, for joining me. I'm going to send you that link to the to the little girl. Oh my God, you're going to show it in your classes. I promise.
Okay. Sounds good.
It's like that.
I'm excited.
All right. Mwah. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.
Please like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed this so that I can continue to bring you content. Thank you so much.